Alright, hey everybody, and welcome to this Unity tutorial. I am going to be teaching you how to make this simple 2D platformer where you can jump, collect coins, and die by spikes. Alright, let's get into it. We are in a empty, brand new Unity project. First thing that we are going to do is create a new scene for our platformer. So, right click, create, scene. Let's call this platformer scene. Go in. Nice. Now you can see up here we are in our platformer scene. Nothing is in here yet. Let's add our player. Right click, 2D object, sprites, and let's make it a circle. Nice. Let's rename it to player. Let's give him a temporary color. How about light blue? Next thing we're going to do is give our player physics. So we are going to give it a circle collider 2D, which wraps around the body of our player. And we are going to give it a rigid body 2D, which allows it to interact with physics. Let's see what happens when we run the game. Nice, our player uses physics and falls through the floor. Next thing we're going to need is a floor to keep our player actually standing on a platform. So we're going to do the same thing, 2D object, sprites, and we're going to look for a square. Let's move this down here. Extend it out, and let's make it a dark blue. Now let's run our scene. Our player still runs through the floor. Let's call this floor as well. That is intended because we forgot to add a box collider to our floor. Now our floor has collision, therefore the player should stop right at the floor. Nice. Alright. Next thing we are going to do is give some movement to our player. So let's create a new folder for scripts and create a new mono behavior script. Let's call it player movement. All right, double click on that and that will open Visual Studio. Okay, so what we are going to want to do is specify some variables. Let's start by specifying a variable for the player's speed. Serialized field, private, float, speed. Nice. Let's also specify a variable for our jump force. Private, float, jump force. Okay. Lastly, we want to refer to our rigid body. So let's make a variable for that. Rigid body 2D, we'll call it RB. And then we're going to want a Boolean to check and see whether we are grounded, i.e. standing on the ground. This should be Boolean. Okay. We will start out by getting a reference to our rigid body. So RB, meaning this one right here, is going to be this game object's rigid body 2D. Next, we want to allow our player to move left and right. Let's put private void update, calculate our movement vector. Then we will apply our movement vector to our rigid body. Let's see it work in Engine. All right, before we can actually make our player move, we have to apply the player movement script to our player. So we're going to take our player movement script that we just created, add it here. And let's put in some starting value for the speed. How about 4? Let's try it out. I'm going to press right on the arrow key. Works. I'm going to press left. Awesome. We have a moving player that can move left to right. Next, let's do the jump. All right, back in our player movement script, we are going to check if we ever press the spacebar. Control-space. Okay, and if we press the space bar, let's modify our rigid body to change its vertical direction. So we will keep the X the same, but we will change our Y to be the jump force that we specify up here. Alright, let's test that out. Before we go and make our player jump, we need to specify the jump force. So I'll say 5. Let's try it. Alright, I can move left and right just like I did before, and let's press space. Nice, we can jump. There is one problem though. If we jump multiple times, we keep jumping up in the air. And yeah, we cannot have that happening. They can only do one jump. So let's change that. Let's go back into our script and make use of this isGrounded variable. So we are going to check for a collision with the ground. Private void on collision enter 2D. We're going to check if the collision dot game object dot tag is equal to, we'll say floor, then isGrounded will be true because we will be touching the ground, which means isGrounded should be true. And let's change that if we are not colliding with the floor on collision exit 2D. Copy that same logic, and this time set isGrounded to false. Okay, let's try that out. Before we continue, let's make sure that the floor actually has the floor tag. As you can see up here, there is no tag. Let's change that. Let's add one. Call it floor. Go back here. Give it that floor tag. Now our player should be able to detect that. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to jump once. Now I'm going to jump a bunch of times. Oh, and that didn't work. And make sure that we actually check for that isGrounded variable. Okay, let's go back in the engine and see if that worked. Alright, I jump once. Now I'm going to spam the spacebar. Awesome, we only jump one time. Our movement is done. Now, we are going to move on to making a spike. So let's get this player over here for right now. And we're going to create a new game object. Create 2D object, sprites, and we'll make this a triangle. And we will color it silver, like a spike. Okay, we will go ahead and put a box collider on this. We will customize it to be just like that. And we will move it down on the ground as a hazard for our player. Matter of fact, I'm going to stretch it in just a little bit. Cool. And let's rename this also to be a spike. Alright, let's create a new script for our spike. Mono behavior script, spike. Okay, double click. Alright, we'll say void on collision enter 2D. And we'll do that same logic that we did over here for the player. Okay, but this time we're not going to check if the other game object that we collide with is the floor. We're going to check if it's actually the player. Therefore, if it is the player, we want to destroy the player. So we're going to say destroy collision.gameObject. It's that simple. Alright, we're going to go back to our spike. We are going to put the script on our game object, and we're going to see if it works. So I run along, jump, and it didn't work. Why not? Oh, I know why. Because we forgot to put the player tag on the player. Let's make sure we do that. Alright, let's test it out. So I move along, jump, and then the player dies, and we can't do anything else. Nice, we have a spike. Cool. Last thing we're going to add is a coin. So this is going to be a bit more involved. Let's move the spike out of the way for right now. And let's add a new game object for our coin. Create a 2D object, a circle. Let's call this coin. And let's make this a bit smaller. I'm gonna make it oblong like a real coin. Okay. And let's color it yellow. And let's move it closer to the ground. Alright, so we have our coin. Let's put some collision on it. Let's go for a box collider. Bring it in just a little bit. Then we will make sure that we check is trigger. What is trigger does is it disables the collider, but still can detect if other things run into it. So without is trigger selected, I can't phase through this coin. But if I make it a trigger, I am able to phase through the coin. So we're going to leave this as a trigger for now, and we're going to make a new script for this coin. Call it coin. Alright, double click. And let's specify a new type of function, void on trigger enter 2D. This time, we're going to do that same thing that we did with the spike, but this time we're going to do it inside on trigger enter instead of on collision enter. Now, we don't want to destroy the player this time. We actually want to destroy ourselves, because when a player collects a coin, it should disappear. So let's test that out real quick. We forgot to add the coin script. Nice, we got that coin. Okay, let's test it out. Nice, we collect the coin. We're able to make the coin disappear, but we also want to keep track of the coin in the back end of the game. We can do that with a coin manager. We're going to make a new mono behavior script, call it coin manager. We're going to specify some variables. We're going to want an int for our private int coin count. And then we're going to want some references to user interface objects, or UI. Private text smash pro UGUI. And we're going to call this coin label. So let's add a public function, public void add coin. We will say coin count plus plus, and we will change our coin label to reflect the new coin count. So we'll say coin label dot text equals coin count to string. Now on this coin, we want to reference that coin manager and say find first object by type coin manager dot add coin. Cool. So we need to add this coin manager into the scene first for it to work. So let's create a empty object, call it coin manager, and add it to our coin. There it is. I'll do that again so that's easier to see. Coin manager, coin manager. Nice. So let's add some UI. Canvas. We'll call this coin manager canvas. And we'll put in a text object. If this pops up, just click import. We'll call this 0 by default. And we'll call this coin label. And we'll put this on the top left of the screen and make the font a little bigger. All right. I forgot to reference this coin label. Drag this here. Nice. So now our coin manager knows what label that we're talking about. All right, let's run into our coin. Awesome, we get another coin. We are probably going to want more than one coin in this scene. So what we could do is we could duplicate this over and over and move all these out, and it would work perfectly fine. So let's see it. However, even though this is working, that's not the best practice, because if we ever need to change this coin, say change the graphic, change the sound effect, change the size of it, we're going to have to do that for every single coin, and it's going to be a big pain in the bum. So what we can do is actually specify a prefab for this coin. which is essentially a blueprint for what all coins should look like in the game. So let's create a new folder for prefabs coin, and we're going to click, drag this down into the folder. Now we have a coin prefab. So now if I take this coin and put some more in the scene, I can go into here, and let's say I want to make the coins fatter. We just changed the one prefab, and now every coin in the scene is fatter. So I'm going to go back and revert that change because I like the skinny coin. But you can see that prefabs are very powerful and should be used. I'm going to organize the scene here just a little bit. Call this coins. We're going to take this, put it in this game object for organization. Nice. And while we're at it, we can make the spike a prefab, because we may want more than one spike in our game. And I'll add a second one so we have another obstacle. And I'll make another organization thing. Put this in here, put this in here. Cool. All right, the last thing we're going to do is put in some graphics so that our player and our coins look a bit better. So let's do that. I am going to create a new folder called art. We're going to go in here. Okay, so we just made our art folder, and I have some art that I want to put in the game on my second monitor here. So I'm going to bring in Mario, and I'm going to bring in a coin. Alright, so we are actually going to go to our player. We're going to get rid of the sprite renderer here, and we're actually going to create an empty game object right underneath the player, it being a child of the parent game object. We're going to call it player GFX, meaning player graphics. We're going to add a sprites renderer, and we're going to put Mario right here. Now Mario is pretty big, so let's scale him down. 5.075. Yep. And then we can customize our collider to fit Mario's shape just a little bit better. Actually, I think we'll get rid of this collider and change it to a capsule collider, because that fits Mario just a bit better. And let's make him just a bit skinnier. Perfect. Alright. Let's see Mario in game. Whoa, okay. Yeah, after we change it to a capsule collider, we should freeze the rotation of the rigid body. So make sure to do that if you did change the collider. Yep. And then we want to change the coins. Now remember, we have our coin prefab. Let's open that up. And let's do that same thing that we did before. Call it coin GFX. Get rid of sprite renderer here. Add a sprite renderer here. And let's put in our coin. Looks pretty big. I'm going to temporarily enable this just for reference. 0.15. That's good. Nice. Get rid of this sprite renderer, so all we have is the coin. Now all of our coins are changed here. Let's play our game one final time. And voila. We have a 2D platformer with spikes and coins.